Hey guys, welcome to Overcrest. I'm Jake, and Chris is out on vacation, so we don't have him to interrupt me during what is going to be hopefully a very fun history episode that I'm presenting. But I did want to have someone to add some color, some commentary, and some expertise. So I have with us our great friend RJ, who, amongst being a dear friend, one of the inner core of Overcrest, he also happens to be a helicopter pilot, and I don't even know if there's additional criteria or what is your title?
My title, helicopter pilot, commercial helicopter pilot.
Commercial helicopter pilot. That works. Yeah, it's not just
Yeah.
like a home built, thing you built in your backyard. But
No, absolutely.
we will get to those, RJ. Just you wait.
I can't wait.
Oh yes. So a lot of guys who are pilots, I feel like, then have their hobby plane or their hobby. Like, how have you ever thought about, or is it? I guess I'm trying to reconcile. Like, if I could fly a helicopter, RJ, that is all I would want to do. Screw driving an old 911. I'm gonna go rip around in my helicopter. So how do you come back to like driving cars as a fun hobby? And have you ever did you ever want to do like more of a hobby or fly for fun?
I think I probably thought about it over the years. I think owning my own helicopter would just be cost prohibitive. I thought about maybe getting my fixed wing license because I don't have a fixed wing license. I don't fly airplanes, and maybe getting an airplane. And then I kind of thought, you know what? I'm 52 now. It's probably a good idea to stay in my lane of aviation rather than accept a whole new level of risk that I'm probably not familiar with. I mean, if I encounter weather in the helicopter, I can just stop and turn around. Whereas in an airplane, it's a little more difficult to do that.
You can't stop mid flight. Yeah. I guess. Is it? I would assume, or I guess just maybe a misunderstanding. Do a lot of helicopter pilots start with fixed wing aircraft usually, or I guess I had assumed that's like you graduate up to helicopters. Is that not the case?
The school that I went to, that used to be their criteria.
Okay.
You had to have a fixed wing license first. In Canada now, well, I think in any private sort of training facility because you don't have to go through the military, obviously. You can find a school.
Because you did
license.
Not. Did you ever serve in the military? Okay.
No, yeah. I looked into it, and I was already older than 18. I already had some college education and things like that, and I wasn't particularly the candidate the U.S. military was, or I think not the U.S. military, the military was looking for. I think they want 18-year-olds who are malleable.
Right.
They want you to have a university degree because you're joining an officer training program, essentially, right, to be an aviator. Mm-hmm. And the pay was really low, and at that point, I was already married, and I just thought, I'm not doing this. I was 26 when I got into it, so it was already kind of too old for them, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you could just go to a private training school and you can get your license. And then the issue is that anybody with enough money can get their license. I haven't really looked into it that specifically. It's very expensive now. I mean, it was expensive then too, but the thing is you graduate like every other junior pilot with your 100 hours if you're a helicopter pilot or 250 hours if you're a fixed wing pilot, and you have no experience, and it's an entirely experience-based industry. So the problem or the conundrum is how do you gain that experience? How do you find a company that has the type of work that a junior pilot can do, where they won't get into trouble or exceed their skill level or have problems, and then build that experience level and eventually become the type of pilot that they can put on any job they might have, right? So,
how many hours do you have now, RJ? Because I know you log as a pilot, any pilot, you log everything, right? Do you have a running total in mind? Because it's
you're required by Transport Canada to keep a personal log of your flight time. I think the FAA probably has a similar rule. I have somewhere around 11,000 hours, maybe a little over 11,000 hours now.
Wow.
And about 7,000 hours of that is on doing external load work. My career arc has been I've been very fortunate, very specialized, and it's worked out really, really well for me. So I'm really grateful for that, because a lot of guys, they'll get their license, and I'd heard of guys struggling on the ground to get into a flying position for up to 10 years. And I can't even imagine, if my goal was to be flying by the time I turned 30, because you get your license and you got to toil around a little bit on the ground doing support work or whatever. And I was fortunate to get into a situation through a series of convoluted events that got me flying before I was 30. And because I guess I felt if I didn't have a good experience base by the time I got to that age, that I would be in a greater risk of being behind the eight ball when it comes to learning curves and age and all those sorts of things.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I should have just structured this entire episode about interviewing you, because I think it's fascinating what you do. But we had to have some fun and comedy in there. I have to imagine it's super specialized, having literally lifting, because what you lift is it primarily like pipeline oil industry equipment into remote places, is what I'm picturing. Talked to you in the past about that.
I started out doing something called seismic exploration. So it's sort of the grassroots or base level of looking for oil and gas.
Okay.
So so that was they have bags of equipment essentially. At the time, they weighed like 234 pounds each or something, and I was flying a 500 at the time. And listeners can look up what that is, but it's basically the little scout helicopter they used in Vietnam, that sort of thing, right?
Oh yeah,
the little egg-shaped one, yeah, an updated version of that.
Yeah.
And so that thing could lift 4 bags at that rate. And what it is you had a GPS coordinate system on board, and you had to dial up the bags were in line. You had to put them at specific GPS points on the ground in a grid pattern. And you'd put the gear out, and then the guys would walk out along the ground and spread all the gear out. And then they'd fire off dynamite, or they'd put vibrations into the ground. And from that, they would get seismic data or a picture of what was underneath the ground. So that was oil and gas. Yeah. And then I sort of got into heli logging for a bit on the coast. That was flying a Vertol, which is the Sea Knight, I think. The Marines use them. It's like the baby Chinook.
Okay, yeah.
I only did that for about 8 months because I kind of discovered that wasn't my area of interest. But
the logging part of it, or the
logging part, yeah, the logging. Okay. I was getting airsick, so it's a twin pilot operation, so that was a complete change, because normally you're by yourself, right? So, so you got one guy who's flying and one guy operating throttles and limiting for weight and power and that sorts of stuff, right? So,
is that the case with it being a twin rotor craft? Is that's like standard for those, or just because of that type of work?
No, that's the class of the aircraft. So depending on how the aircraft was certified and the complexity of the systems that are on board, it'll either be a single pilot or double or 2 pilot operation, right?
Interesting.
Or in some cases 3. For guys who are flying the sky crane and they're doing external load work, there's a pilot, co-pilot, and there's a load master who faces backwards. And yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, hope you don't get airsick at doing that.
Yeah, facing backwards and flying is not a lot of fun. And so yeah, I only did that for 8 months, and then I got into a company that had a bunch of drill work, so exploration for mining, copper, molybdenum, gold, silver, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And what they do is they have these heli-portable drill rigs that they drill into the ground and take core samples to see if they can find the gold veins or whatever other veins, and to make a map of what the resource is underground. So essentially these drills all come apart, depending on what's going on there, 20, anywhere from 20 to 40 lifts, depending on what the drill is and how deep.
Oh, wow.
They go. Yeah, so, and you have to assemble the drill because the helicopter, the class that we use, can't lift the whole thing at once, right? So it all comes apart into little pieces, and you assemble it like Lego out on the hill. So, there's some precision long lining involved with that, and you're working in mountainous areas with slopes and weather and coastal weather and all that sort of thing. And there's guys at the bottom of the line, so you got to be careful you don't squish anybody, right? Like that would be a bad day.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. And then I actually, somewhere in that mix too, I also did some power line work where I was stringing sock line for, they would then use that to pull conductors through the towers and that sort of thing. That was a lot of fun actually, but it was high energy sort of a thing, right? Because
Haha, pun intended.
Yeah, we were side pulling the sock line off of a 500, and you have to thread it through the little pulleys and through the towers and everything.
Oh, and so you're doing that in the helicopter, trying to get it threaded through.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and then when you do the center phase, there's something called needle work where you basically have this thing made of rebar and it's got hooks and you pull it and then you hook it on the tower and then you go over the other side of the tower and you pull it through. And
Wow.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, but pretty,
Well,
the elevated
high focus.
I will say, I gotta say, high focus, elevated risk, and there were some things about that I didn't care for, things that went wrong, and I just thought this is way too risky, for a guy with 3 kids and a wife. I'm not doing this.
Yeah. So with your job, are you on location for a few days at a time? Is it like an on and an off thing, or are you able to fly out to these locations and then you just fly back home?
So depending on what company you're working for and how they run things, it can be, well, you can do 42 days max, and then you need a 5-day break, and then you could go and do 42 days again. But we're limited by the number of hours per day we can work,
right?
The number of hours we can be on duty, and the number of flight hours that we can fly. Under the regulations that we have currently and the type of work that we do a 14 days on, 14 days off, and I travel on my days. So I'll fly out, well, I'll drive to the airport, then I'll fly out to the airport about 4.5 hours so south of where we're working. Then we get in a rental car and we drive 4.5 hours north. And then my cross shift will fly out to the remote airstrip that we're working near, and then we'll swap. I'll jump in the helicopter and fly out to the job site. So, and it takes about a day, to travel those distances and get into work. And then, we start our 14-day shift. So.
Again, if I could fly a helicopter, I would just put a landing pad on my roof of my house and then just commute via helicopter. Yeah. I think that would be the move.
I guess that would be good if the work was local,
Yeah, no.
That would work.
I think,
man. In the span of my career and the companies that I've worked with, I've had 2 jobs where I could come home every night.
Yeah.
One was a seismic job and the other one was the power line work that we were doing.
I suppose any other mining stuff, you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, well, you're where the gold is, right? So if there was gold under my house.
If they find gold, do you ever get a little souvenir being you're like, oh yeah, just hook some on my line right there? No, I would never do that.
Yeah, no. We actually, interestingly, I started working for this one company, and then I took an absence and I went contract work and worked for a bunch of other companies. And then I started working for the company I'm at currently, and they had taken over this job that we had started on. So through a series of these companies, basically we've seen a job go from a tent camp all the way up to it's a fully functioning mine now. And it's heavily guarded. There's security and everything,
there's security,
right? Because
involved.
That's I don't even know what the numbers are, but $18 million in gold a day is being poured, type of thing.
Wow.
Right? So, yeah, I that might be an exaggeration. I don't know. I wouldn't know because they don't publicize that information.
Yeah, I suppose they don't tell you. Yeah, we did really well today. Look at all this gold.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, so
that's
there's
crazy.
none of that. Nobody really knows what's going on, but it's profitable enough. I had heard a number about just the operating costs of that place, and this is, I don't know, 8-10 years ago was $1 million a day, right? So, that's between all the equipment that's operating on site and all the people working on site and the cost of the aircraft and all that stuff, right?
So are you flying the gold out, for example?
So they were.
Wow.
They were flying it out. It was contracted by a different company than ours. They were flying it. Again, they wouldn't, they weren't publishing the stats on when they were flying the gold out or anything like that. They're heavily guarded security, always there, right? And then a security company hired to fly in the helicopter with the gold and undisclosed location of where they're flying it to or from, right? So, but yeah, they were flying the gold out.
This seems like a great script for a heist movie that I haven't ever thought of or seen before.
That conversation has come up so many times,
right?
If we all worked in Hollywood, it would be like, this would be a fantastic
that
story.
Seems so cool. Yeah, the complexity of it.
Somebody rocket launchers the
Well, okay, I
helicopter
wasn't
into the
going that
sky.
crazy. I was saying, oh no, RJ has a mechanical failure and has to ditch his
Sure.
load, but
Yeah.
they don't know where it was because the transponder beacon isn't working, except it was because you were the one that actually just sabotaged it. And then you come in at night with your other crew and we all get away with the gold.
That's right.
But then you double cross us because that's,
Yeah.
That's at the end of the movie. There's always got to be the twist.
That's
Great.
right.
Okay. With that, I'm going to go write a screenplay.
Maybe a storyboard. We'll do a storyboard.
No, that is super cool, super fascinating. Again, I should have just spent this whole hour talking to you and your experiences because I think it's fascinating and amazing. Nokian Tires has officially launched their newest tire, and it's one we're especially excited about, as it's tailor-made for the type of driving we like to do here at Overcrest. It's called the Surpass ASO1, and what sets it apart is it's a high-performance, all-season tire. It's made specifically for drivers who want the most out of their cars without sacrificing capability when the roads get slick. We know all too well how unpredictable the roads can be, whether you're out on one of our rallies, one of your own adventures, or just running to the grocery store. And let's face it, a car can only perform as well as the tires it's on. That's why the new Surpass ASO1 is so great. It offers the grip of a dedicated performance tire, but won't leave you stranded if the road or weather gets rough. Not only does it come with a 55,000-mile warranty, it also offers Nokian Tires pothole protection. If you happen to damage your tire beyond repair, Nokian will replace it for free. Check it out at nokiantires.com/surpass. So I think without further ado, I'm going to bury the lead a little bit here. And this is a story, RJ, you probably will recognize or would have heard of in the back of your mind. So okay. I'm gonna get into it, and then we'll get into the really fun and crazy stuff that I'm definitely going to lean on you to say, well, that's a terrible idea. Or, yes, I also have jumped off a barn in my youth attached to a lawnmower trying to fly. Okay, so... And that really gets to the core of what this is. We tend to think of flight as this modern, polished miracle. But for most of human history, flight belonged to kind of the weirdos and the dreamers, the tinkers, the backyard engineers. I mean, look at, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They literally were just bicycle mechanics that kind of stumbled upon and made something happen. These are the kind of people that looked at gravity and said, yeah, but maybe not. Maybe it doesn't need to be that way. And every generation has these people. Amateur aviator with a garage full of tubing and canvas, convinced they can build a plane that lands on a roof, or the guy who buys a surplus parachute at a flea market and jumps off a barn. Then there was balloonists, people who voluntarily attached themselves to bags of floating gas and floated into the sky with no idea where they're landing. So really, humanity has had a long history of looking at the sky and doing the most irresponsible thing possible in pursuit of just being up there. And if you zoom in on America in the mid-20th century, the golden age of backyard projects, you'll find an entire subculture of people who didn't just dream of flight. They believed it was their right to attempt it. The era of popular mechanics covers, with guys wearing goggles, smoking pipes, and presenting the home-built helicopter you can make for $62. This is Air Progress Magazine. Home-built aircraft. Float-equipped, home-built hobbycopter. Wow. Amazing. Yeah. This was the environment, the cultural soup that produced today's, I don't want to say hero, but today's subject. The guy we're talking about. A man who saw airplanes fly over his backyard every day, who'd always wanted to join them, believed down to his bones that flying didn't necessarily require an airplane at all. And technically, he wasn't wrong. Today's story is about a man named Larry Walters. Larry Walters was not an adventurer, not a test pilot, not an engineer. He was just a normal, painfully normal guy. He was born in 1949, raised in North Hollywood, California. He was the kind of kid who glued together airplane models on the kitchen table, as I'm sure sounds familiar to many of us. He watched military jets from nearby bases and imagined himself in a cockpit someday. That part of him never went away, as we'll find. He wanted to be a pilot badly. Not in the, I think I want to do that someday, but in my entire identity depends on this working out. But that didn't really work out for him at all. When Larry applied to join the Air Force, they failed him instantly. His eyesight was atrocious. Not like you need glasses bad, but flight disqualifyingly bad. And just like that, his dreams evaporated. Which RJ, I should first of all state that you're a Canuck. So I don't know if like FAA regulations are different per Canada, but what are, and is it military specifically when they, because I've heard that before, like, oh, you have glasses or you have bad eyesight, yep, can't fly. What is that? Is that a thing? Are there rules for that in
Sure.
commercial space?
Well, commercial space is quite a bit more lax. We have Transport Canada up here. It's not FAA, but it's very similar regulations. They intertwine with one another. Some differences. For commercial aviation with regards to eyesight, basically, you can have glasses, you can have had laser eye surgery, that sort of thing. For the military, absolutely not. You have to have had perfect eyesight. If by the time you go through, this was told to me by one of the recruiters in the Canadian military, was that if by the time you go through all the training and they've invested the millions of dollars to get you up to, a pilot status,
Right.
if you then require corrective lenses or corrective eye surgery, they will allow that. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they will allow that. But they will not take you in, as far as I know anyway, with poor eyesight to begin with. So.
Yeah, well, this guy probably showed up at the recruiter office with Coke bottle glasses, so it didn't work out. And so he became a truck driver. He worked odd jobs. He lived quietly with his girlfriend, just a regular guy with an irregular dream, just constantly festering inside him. One story says that when Larry was 13, he bought a weather balloon at a military surplus store and tied it to a lawn chair and sat in it, expecting something to happen. But, nothing did. But that idea, that image, that might be the easiest way to fly. That kind of stuck with him. And Larry never really outgrew that. He just waited for the right moment to try again. Now, as we know with all of my stories, I like to go down tangents and all these sidebars. So before we go further, let's take a look at how this was not, the first attempt, or in any way, Larry was not alone in the pantheon of utterly questionable aviation attempts. In 1901, a guy in Connecticut happened to strap wings to his arms and jumped off his barn and broke both legs. In 1920, a Minnesota man, one of my own, he built a propeller-driven bicycle with wings. It did not fly. It just dragged him across the field until the frame snapped. In the 50s, Popular Mechanics ran articles encouraging men to construct their own helicopters at home, which is so unsafe it barely qualifies as a suggestion. And in the 70s, we talked about hang gliders becoming the everyman's flight option, resulting in so many hospital visits nationwide, and probably much worse than that as well. Because, if your hang glider fails, you're not just going to the hospital, judging by the altitude you're at. So yeah, it's the Backyard Mechanic has produced some incredible things. Airplane, personal computer, electric starter. It has also produced a staggering number of failures. And our man Larry, he stands proudly among them. So let's talk about weather balloons quickly before we move on, because this is paramount to our story and how Larry did try that once. Weather balloons are massive. You don't buy one at Party City. These are made of tough latex designed to expand to the size of a small house at altitude. When filled with helium, each one can lift several pounds. Several pounds? That might be wrong. A typical weather balloon bursts somewhere near 100,000 feet due to expansion. And up there, the latex gets thin, fragile, and eventually does pop. The payload falls back to Earth under a parachute, and that's how they get their data, or used to at least. I don't think they use weather balloons anymore. Maybe they do. Anyways, our man Larry, he bought 45 of these. And this is the part where an engineer would usually step and say, oh, that is a terrible idea, Mr. Larry. He didn't actually have any engineering friends or background. He asked the Army surplus store how many he could buy. And they said, as many as you want. And so Larry bought a lot. So these giant rubber bags are about 5 feet in diameter. You fill it with helium, and it expands as it rises. It can reach the size of basically like 25, 35 feet before it bursts in diameter. There's helium is generally what there's used. Hydrogen can be used, but that gets spicy, as we know. Our man Larry used helium, which is, I guess, probably the only sensible decision he made, opting instead of hydrogen. And he apparently, helium was not in short supply like it is today, which I believe is a thing. So Larry's 45 balloons would theoretically lift 600 pounds, and he weighed 150 pounds. His lawn chair that he tied them to weighed 15 pounds. He added water jugs as a ballast, which he fully expected to control his altitude with, which we will talk about in a minute. It did not. And with enough lift, enough optimism, and not nearly enough rope, Larry was about to get airborne for real. So he had a plan, or some semblance of a plan. He didn't stumble upon this. He had the simple goal: float above Los Angeles in a lawn chair, take in the view, maybe drift around a little bit, and come down gently, like a picnic, in your lawn chair, but very high up, as we'll find. So he has 45 weather balloons. He got his helium tanks from a welding supply shop, a Sears aluminum lawn chair with the classic woven vinyl straps, like that's your classic grandma's lawn chair. He did have a CB radio, which I like, a parachute, which he didn't wear. He just brought along, I guess, and tied it to the lawn chair, and a pellet gun. A pellet gun to pop the balloons in order to descend. He also brought sandwiches, if you need your rations, and a 6-pack of beer. Literally, you of course need a 6-pack of beer. So Larry called his craft the Inspiration 1, which implies the intent of an Inspiration 2, which was, in retrospect, optimistic. His girlfriend, Carol, was not thrilled, but she didn't stop him either. She knew Larry, and she knew this was going to happen regardless. So in their backyard, their small home in San Pedro, California, Larry and a small ground crew began inflating weather balloons, tying them carefully to the frame of his lawn chair, and slowly the rig transformed from a normal piece of patio furniture into something that looked like it belonged maybe in a children's parade. I don't know. The neighbors watched from their porches, apparently, eyebrows raised. I don't know if anyone called the cops at this point, but they were all wondering what the hell they were going to be doing. Larry's friend then helped tether the chair to a Jeep with a sturdy rope. The plan was, once they were ready, Larry would get in, settle down, and they would gently release the rope so Larry would float upwards, at a manageable rate, and maybe test it out first, a few feet off the ground. And like so many great American plans, this one fell apart immediately. So you might be thinking, first of all, is this legal? And technically, at first, yes. Amateur balloon rigs fall into a very strange part of FAA regulation. Up to a point, unmanned free balloons aren't heavily regulated unless they exceed a certain size, weight, or altitude threshold. And manned ballooning, traditional hot air ballooning, is entirely legal. But there is no rule book for a guy tying 45 military surplus weather balloons to a lawn chair with a BB gun. So Larry's plan was definitely a gray area. You said that's true about ballooning or amateur balloon rigs. Do you have any experience or know anything about that?
So there's something called right of way in aviation, where aircraft, depending on their class, have to give right of way based on whatever they are. And balloons basically are the only lighter than air aircraft that don't have to give right of way to anything. So every other aircraft in the sky has to give right of way to it. Now, having said that, as you stated, there are altitude restrictions with which they have to operate within so that they don't interfere with controlled airspace and low-level air routes and things like that, right? And
Gotcha.
so by the sound, I've heard this story. So by the sounds of your story, I know where this is going to go. Larry is definitely going to
exceed those altitude ceilings.
Those limitations. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It reminds me. So the right of way rule, that reminds me of nautical, and sailing and when you're out on the water navigating, right? It's like, okay, if you have a sailboat or, an unpowered craft, you have to, give way to them and they have right of way. Same thing, I suppose, in the sky. Yes. So here we are on the morning of July 2nd, 1982. It's early afternoon, Southern California. The sun is bright, air shimmering over rooftops, and Larry climbs into the chair. His feet dangle. He straps in. So apparently there was some seatbelt, I guess. Then the crucial detail: someone releases the tether rope early. Not intentionally, not ceremoniously, just accidentally. And the moment the rope slipped free, physics took over. Now, I don't know if I should show the news article now or wait till the end, because I do have then like details here. I think it's worth, for the sake of just showing Mr. Larry Walters. There's a news story, but then also he was on The Late Show with David Letterman.
Accomplishment right now. The voices you're going to hear are of my next guest in the air and his girlfriend on the ground.
Have you seen this, RJ?
Would be Mr. Larry Walters.
This is
going up in the lawn chair.
Real footage.
Right there is when I thought this was a bad idea.
Yep.
Ron, this inspiration, you read me over. Right now, I can hear you. Okay, evidently I lost my glasses. Ron, cut him down. You gotta come down if you can't see. Cut him down. I got my other glasses. I can see perfectly. Don't worry. Is everything okay? Everything's A-okay. Notify all the proper authorities, etc. I'm headed towards, I can see Marine Line right now. Okay, you can see Marine Line. They're heading to it. Oh my God, you're going towards the ocean already. Okay, here, have you called up? Okay, if you get towards the ocean, land over by Marine. Wait, I'm stuck. Are you okay? I'm making a turn. I'm going inland. Notify LAX. Over.
Sounds just like NASA, doesn't it? Well, we're delighted to have this gentleman with us tonight. Please welcome Larry Walters.
Okay, we can come back to that, but I
Well,
just
he
love that they had that. Yeah, he lived. Yeah. Notify the FAA.
Yeah.
Notify LAX. Okay, so when that rope just I read somewhere it snapped, and I read somewhere else that like it just, they let go of it, whoever his quote ground crew was. Regardless, as soon as that happened, his ascent was violent, nearly vertical, and actually much quicker than he ever thought. He rocketed skyward at roughly 800 feet per minute. Now, being a rotary craft pilot, how fast is that? When you're taking off in an airliner, what is that ascent rate, or what do you usually ascend at? 800 feet per minute in a balloon sounds, in a lawn chair, sounds fast.
In the helicopter, I wouldn't say that that's outside of the normal parameters
Okay.
of operation. You know, you want to take into account your passengers and your altitude that you're tending to go to, because, you know, people, pressure in their ears needs some time to adjust.
Right.
So, you know, if you start going faster than 800 feet a minute, things can get uncomfortable for people, especially if they're, you know, have a cold or something like that, right? So
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, because Larry clearly did not have a pressurized cockpit or any other.
Nope.
I mean, he had beer, so he's fine, right? Within minutes, he was above the hillside. He cleared the clouds moments after that, and Larry had planned and expected to rise maybe a couple hundred feet, enough to see the neighborhood from above, maybe snap a few photos with a camera I brought. Instead, he climbed past 2,000 feet, then 6,000, then 10,000, then 16,000 feet and beyond, where commercial airliners roam at the time. His glasses fogged with cold. His breath was becoming difficult, because at that altitude, I mean, 16,000 feet, like I've been skiing at the top of, what was it? It's Big Sky, Montana, whatever that mountain is. That's 13,000 feet. And that's like, yeah, you have a hard time catching your breath.
Yeah, there's regulations in aviation. So anything over 10,000 feet, up to 13,000 feet for more than 30 minutes. And the air crew has to have oxygen. This is an unpressurized aircraft. And then, you know, anything over 13,500, I think it is, everybody's got to have oxygen, basically. So it's 16,000 feet. You know, depending on his lung health, you know, he could be in some trouble there.
Yeah, I do have a little sidebar about like the physiology of what happens at altitude, you know, and really above 16,000 feet, like oxygen levels are roughly half what they are at sea level. Hypoxia can set in. You just don't get enough oxygen to your brain. You can become confused, euphoric, unconscious. The temperature, of course, drops dramatically, and you basically just become very disoriented. So,
well, and if he's had 6 beers at this point too, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, it's all part of it, right?
Not gonna help.
So in the clinical phrasing of the FAA report that came out later, he was, quote, at significant risk of incapacitation, which I think is perfectly reasonable and accurate to say. Also, he had
Hypoxia.
absolutely no control over where he was going. He's in a lawn chair. Commercial airline pilots are used to strange things in the sky. You know, sometimes they see weather and birds or odd reflections, but they're not used to seeing a man in a lawn chair floating at their altitude. But that's exactly what happened. Multiple commercial airline pilots radioed air traffic control to report an unidentified flying object. One of them came close enough to confirm, quote, "It appears to be a man in a lawn chair." Imagine being that pilot. Imagine having to convey that to Tower and be like, did I actually see that? I don't even think I want to say that. Yeah. So meanwhile, Larry drifted quietly over Long Beach. The wind carried him gently westward, then north. He held his pellet gun, but was too afraid to shoot the balloons, worried the entire rig would tip over and send him tumbling. Again, remember, he planned on being a couple 100 feet up and maybe still connected to a rope. And now he's at 16,000 feet, freezing, confused with hypoxia, where airliners are passing by. His CB radio suddenly burst to life at that moment. A trucker, quote, "What in the hell are you doing up there?" Larry answered, calm but clipped, "Well, sort of flying," was the official recorded response. Air traffic control, now aware of his existence, began monitoring his altitude and drift. The FAA activated emergency procedures, unsure of how to classify the event. There are stories that the U.S. Air Force was potentially alerted and scrambled, but no one confirmed this. Again, no one really doubts that they were called. Larry Walters had, without clearance, created an airspace violation so bizarre that the FAA had no pre-written category for it. He became the first and last recorded case of a Class A airspace incursion by lawn furniture. So at this point, Larry had been drifting for hours. Up there in the cold blue quiet above Los Angeles, he finally realized he couldn't stay aloft forever, and the helium was not going anywhere. So because he was heavy and the way that these helium balloons work, they didn't get to the altitude where they would normally pop. So either he stays up there for a really long time until they start to just dissipate, or he needs to take action. And so this is where his pellet gun came in. Shoot a balloon, lose a little lift, descend slowly, gently, just like an elevator made of hopes and rope and bad decisions. But the moment he lifted the gun and fired, the recoil shocked him. Not because of the power of a pellet gun, but because he was balancing so precariously that the lawn chair lurched. And the whole setup was balanced like a stack of cards. And if you pop too many balloons on one side, he'd begin cartwheeling downward like an aluminum wind chime. But there was no choice. So he had to aim carefully and shoot out one balloon at a time. And this was not like a rifle. I saw a photo of it. It's like a little handheld pellet gun. So imagine, and you saw how long that rope was. Like, I hope I get one and not hit 10 in a row at the same time. So miraculously, the chair began to descend, very slowly at first, drifting sideways, wobbling under its shrinking bouquet of latex and lift. He was coming down, but the wind was blowing him toward an urban part of Long Beach, filled with houses, trees, and power lines. And electricity famously does not get along with large objects descending from the sky. There have been numerous reports of that. I feel like, RJ, you might actually have some experience or at least know of protocols when working, because you do, I didn't even get into what you specifically do, but you do a lot of lifting work with aircraft. And I'm assuming when you're not in the middle of the bush and you're coming around power lines, you have to be very careful with that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Not only, I mean, I've done some power line work as well, but with the type of work I do with external load work, of course, I've got a line under the machine and I'm placing things on the ground. So, if you get too close to a power line, you get something called arcing because it's live power down the power lines. And, if you get enough static, precipitation or whatever in the air, you can cause an arcing across it because it's going to seek the ground point, right? So generally speaking, you want to try and stay 200 feet or more away from a live power line if you're doing that sort of work, right?
So, fun fact, speaking of arcing, so we have dedicated service up to our house, like, 400 amp service. And so we have our own transformer on our property. We're the only house served by this transformer. And the power goes out frequently because squirrels decide to jump from the tree to the power line in the transformer, and 30,000 volts in midair arcs them, and it just cooks them. And I find the power goes out. I go out to the transformer, and I find literally fried, smoking squirrels on the ground. It's been 2 in the last month. I need to trim that tree and also just sit out there with Larry's pellet gun. Probably is the best solution there.
Is that good eating or what?
I haven't tried it. However, when I come back the next day, the carcasses are miraculously gone. So something likes them. Yeah, coyotes or eagles or something. Who knows? All right, so back to Larry and hopefully not becoming a fried squirrel. He saw the wires coming toward him, or I suppose he was coming towards the wires in that case, but of course had no control. His descent speed increased as the helium volume decreased, right? Because as you get lower in altitude, now the air is compressing it, so you actually are getting less lift the lower you go. That's the nature of how lighter than aircraft work, which is bizarre. I actually want to do a whole episode on like the heyday of lighter than air ships, like airships from back in the day, like the Hindenburg and the Zeppelin, and how like that was a whole industry for a while there, where you could like it was like instead of going on a cruise ship, you went on an airship. There's super cool history with it. Anyways, where'd I get to? Yes, so the balloons did actually get snagged on a cluster of power lines. The tension snapped several balloons at once. The remaining lift vanished instantly. Larry dropped into the lines, and the whole setup arced with a violent crack. Incredibly, he did not get electrocuted. A 20-minute power outage, of course, did hit the Long Beach neighborhood, affecting thousands of residents. Now, what I did know that isn't mentioned here, but from my squirrel fiascos, because the power crew has to come out, and they tell us that it sounds like a shotgun going off. And what you're hearing, I thought it was literally like the squirrel's intestines exploding from, being heated up. But there's actually inline fuses in the power lines. And they are these capsules. And when they go out, when they have like too much voltage going through them or too much amperage, they will pop. And it's very loud. So I imagine what happened there is he arced it. It blew one of these, fuses or breakers, and then they lost power and he didn't die somehow. However, firefighters did arrive momentarily, and then the police, and then the utility workers, and then a crowd of onlookers. In the middle of it all, strapped into his lawn chair still, completely uninjured, wearing an altimeter around his neck and holding a pellet gun, was Larry Walters. One firefighter reportedly shouted to him, "You okay?" Larry nodded, "Yep." And then he climbed down from the utility pole, dusted himself off, and walked towards the officers waiting to arrest him. So it turns out you cannot do something like this, at least not in America, without becoming, famous for 5 minutes, and then also, getting arrested subsequently. So I want to go back to this Letterman interview because I think it goes into a little bit of the aftermath and what happened next. Just comes out in a t-shirt.
This is a phenomenal thing. Where did you get the idea to do this? When did it hit you? You said it was a 20-year dream?
Yes, sir. It hit me when I was a young boy, about 13 years old. I was in an Army-Navy surplus store. Saw a weather balloon dangling from the ceiling. And I just got the idea to inflate these balloons. And I figured if I had enough of them, it'd lift me. The idea was just, the float.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by it, and I fulfilled the 20-year dream.
Have you done anything else in attempting to make your dream come true before now?
Well, the main thing I did, at the urging of an associate, Ron Richland, who also, that tape you saw, he's the man who's responsible for it. I'm sorry both he and my fiancée, Carol Van Duzen, who put up the money for the entire project, could not be here. But at his urging, I took a parachute course. And I had a very good parachute on, very reliable, and I was prepared. And at one time, I was thinking of actually using it at 16,000 feet.
What kind of planning goes into this? Because when you say you hook balloons to a lawn chair, it doesn't sound, like...
First of all...
Like Neil Armstrong probably wouldn't be involved there.
The thing is, I call it American ingenuity.
Yeah.
That's what I call it, Chris. And you heard the audio tapes. I had confidence in myself, in the craft, and I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I really knew what I was doing.
Now, when you took off there, you actually lifted off prematurely, didn't you?
Yes, sir. The idea was to be tethered at 100 feet for approximately an hour, and about a half hour before launch, we were going to notify FAA and a few airports and let them know this lawn chair was going up with all these balloons, right? And how it's gonna, but unfortunately, which is on the tape, the tether line broke prematurely, and that's when my whole ground crew panicked. And
now, why did it break?
there was no one to take the slack up on it. It was a 550-pound test nylon line, and the wind was blowing rather strong over
it's just
the
paracord,
just
550
above
test.
About maybe the first couple hundred feet, and it just took that cluster up and me in it and snapped that line. And we have it on tape and film, and it sounded like a gunshot when that line snapped.
How many balloons did you have?
Approximately 43, sir.
And they were filled with?
Helium gas.
Helium. Was that an estimate? Were you just guessing that 43 would get you up?
Oh, no. We had done much prior testing prior to this. We had test inflations. We knew that each balloon would lift approximately 14 to 15 pounds. And so we just multiplied that. And
now, is it expensive to get that much helium?
Well, like I say, Carol, she financed it. She bought all the gas, and
His girlfriend, Carol.
Anyway, the gas and the balloons came to $3,000, and she bought my parachute for me. Thank God bless her. And that was another $800, and she went heavily into debt to see my dream come true.
I read a figure this afternoon that said the whole project cost around $15,000.
That is correct, because we were going to originally go from the Mojave Desert. And it was Carol's idea to launch from her backyard.
Why?
Only because there was a hospital about a half mile down the road.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Now, once you went up, what was your means of controlling the lift or descending or?
Okay, I had complete control of the craft, and we have tapes, audio tapes. Yes, I did. I had complete control of my craft, and I mean, even when the line snapped, and you know, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But I had complete control of the craft. I had an altimeter right under my chin, and it was showing me my rate of ascent. And I had several hundred pounds of water ballast. And so what happened was I was trying to catch an easterly wind current, and when I went up to 16,000 feet, I knew I couldn't go up much higher. I'd be a dead man. So I got my BB pistol, which I was going to tether. I was going to strap that on at my last hour of preparation with a few other instruments. And anyway, I got my BB pistol, shot out about 10 or 12 of the balloons, slowed my rate of ascent.
That seems
so I was rising
aggressive.
about 1,000 feet per minute.
10 to 12
That
at
was
once.
much too fast.
And you just shot the balloons out, and that caused you to come down?
Well, it was carefully. I shot the outer balloons out first. I knew what I was doing.
Complete control.
No, but there's so many questions I could ask you about this because, as you said, you really had most of the variables controlled. But why a lawn chair? What I mean?
American ingenuity. Why not a lawn chair?
Yeah.
I mean, it was the best. Believe me, I looked at baskets, and I looked at gondolas, sir, and the lawn chair was the best suited means.
Yeah. Was it just one of those folding kind that you take
No,
to
and
the
I'm not
beach?
going to mention the department store where I got it at anymore. It's gotten too much free publicity.
Yeah.
But I put it through my own torture test. I mean, it went through the Larry torture test.
Yeah.
And it survived that, and I knew it could fulfill my dream.
What happened what happened when you contacted the Los Angeles International Airport, or your friend on the ground contacted?
Okay, my friend, first of all, when he told him, he says, "You're not going to believe this, but there's a guy up there in a lawn chair with 43 balloons." And, no, really. And we got this on tape and audio, but he said, "You're not going to believe." Everyone was panicking because this was totally unexpected, the cable snapping.
You were actually also seen by other aircraft,
I was
right?
spotted evidently by Delta and a TDWA flight at 16,000 feet.
16,000 feet. This is truly amazing, and we're going to pause, and Larry will be back here with us, and we'll continue discussing this man's odyssey right after. We'll take a look at this.
It's just bizarre. I don't know. I didn't watch the rest of this to see if Larry comes back, but I love that he's so confident. Like, I was in complete control.
Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, this gentleman is Larry Walters, who recently went up about 16,000 feet with the helium balloons and a lawn chair. And was this, were you frightened?
No, sir.
Well, couldn't you fall out of the chair?
No, impossible.
Well, I've fallen out of lawn chairs in my backyard.
You wouldn't have fallen out of my chair.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. You would not have fallen out of my chair.
You're pretty well strapped in?
I wasn't strapped in at all. I didn't have a safety belt or a seat
You're
belt.
just sitting in the chair.
I was sitting in the chair.
What the hell, Larry?
Believe me, I knew what I was doing.
But now what
What a goofball.
but what guarantee do you have when the chair lifts that you won't be pitched forward or left or right? What
in fact, I had the chair pitched. We have this on videotape. We had it pitched back in about a 45-degree angle, or 40-degree angle. And I was pitched back intentionally.
Yeah.
And then when I was strapped in, even if I had to jump out, it would have been a little difficult to get out of that chair. No, there was no need for a seatbelt.
What about a problem with other aircraft? You mentioned that you were spotted by 2 commercial airline planes. Now, did you actually see any?
That's an honor. No, I did not see or hear any the roar of any jet engines. But at least they confirmed my altitude, which was 16,000 feet.
Yeah. Did you have any? Were you going to do anything to let people know ahead of time that there might be a guy in a lawn chair in the area?
You know, that's when I was going to be tethered for an hour, and then a half hour before, I was going to cut myself loose because nobody else would do it for me. My ground crew were going to notify the proper authorities. We were going to give them a half-hour notice. Now, what I did was wrong. I'm not making excuses, but we were going to give the FAA and all the local airports a half-hour notice.
Yeah.
And it's by the grace of God that, you know, I didn't hit a plane or...
Now, why was this wrong? How were you different from any other balloonist?
First of all, most balloonists don't go from clusters of weather balloons, and they're very fragile, too. I mean, you could poke your finger through one of them. They're so fragile. Yeah. Or a pin. They can be popped with a pin. That's how fragile they are.
So you did... there is a law against this?
There's a law against taking up a balloon or balloons without a license, and the FAA already said if I had a license, they would have revoked it. But since I don't have a license, they can't revoke it. So
now, would you do this again?
No, this was the fulfillment of a 20-year dream. Yeah. And I accomplished my dream.
Yeah. Now, how does that feel, having succeeded in achieving what you always wanted to do?
I achieved inner peace. I've achieved inner peace within myself.
Inner peace. Oh boy.
Well, that's good.
Okay, Larry. Okay, I just wanted to finish that because that was amazing. Yeah, he went on the Tonight Show. He went on Johnny Carson, radio shows, magazines. He became kind of a folk hero or a symbol of absurd American adventureness, and people loved him. But he kind of didn't do well with the fame. He never wanted any of this. It gets into a sad story that I won't go into. He eventually took his own life later. It wasn't immediately after. Yeah, but we will get to the fact that the FAA had no trouble handling his attention. They held hearings, they conducted interviews, they analyzed the flight path, the altitude, the airspace he violated, and eventually they fined Larry $1,500 for operating an aircraft without a license, operating an unauthorized balloon craft, entering controlled airspace, and creating a hazard. Larry initially planned to contest the charges, but later said, quote, "If the FAA was mad at you, would you want to argue?" So he paid the fine, which apparently was only 10% of the total cost. How do you spend $15,000 on weather balloons? I didn't understand that.
In 1982.
Right. That's ridiculous. So it's an absolutely crazy story. I think, I had heard of it before, but I didn't realize just how crazy it was that he got up to 16,000 feet. And honestly, that he was able to just land the thing as he had planned. Like, I can't imagine how it's absurd. So,
well, I didn't plan to go into power lines, but
well, okay, not according to plan. Good point. But like the fact that he said, he had the parachute on, and when you're at 16,000 feet and the thing isn't descending, like I feel like that maybe would have even been the safer route if it was actually like a correct parachute. I don't know.
Sure,
have you ever jumped out of an aircraft, RJ?
No, I've never jumped out of a perfectly functioning aircraft.
No? Okay. I agree with that. And I suppose with, a rotorcraft, you can just kind of, what do they call it? Auto rotor down or non-power down?
There's no jumping out for me. We auto rotate, I guess. I guess you get, I mean, on the scale of emergencies and things that can go wrong, an engine failure is pretty rare, but we do training for that every year,
Have you ever had any close calls or anything of note?
I had a near engine failure, a bearing, what I thought was a bearing start letting go in a 407. Actually, one time I started to hear just a feedback in my headset, in my helmet. It just started as a really sort of background whine, like a beep.
Was it actually you're hearing the interference, electronic interference because of the frequency? Or was it like you took your headset off and you could hear like a wheel bearing type of deal?
Well, I wear a helmet, so there was no taking that off in flight.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah.
It was, I had a full load of skiers on board, and we actually had a passenger in the front, which after that, we never did that again because just, there's no point having guests in the front of the machine. But he was talking away, and I heard this, and I thought, is that coming through the radio? So I said, hey, Robert, can you stop talking for a second here? I need to hear this. And it was slowly getting louder and louder, and I tried turning the radios off, and I'm like, well, it's not the radio. And I looked back at my lead guide who was in the back of the machine, and his eyes are like this, and he's like pointing up and pointing down and pointing sideways and pointing everywhere. And his headset, unfortunately, was the one next to the door, and he could hear me, but he couldn't talk because it had been dropped on the floor so many times throughout the day by the ski. Those headsets live a hard life back there. And finally, I'm like, you know what, we're going to land. So I did a gentle sort of left-hand descending turn and put it on the ground and shut it down, and everybody went back to the lodge in a van. And later that night, the engineers came out, and they're like, okay, well, start it up for us and we'll see what's going on. And I started up, and it's dark out, of course. And all I see is this headlight, like one of those things you put on your helmet, comes running around the front of the machine, and the guy's doing this and shut it down. And eventually it's a much longer story. Anyway, that helicopter got slung onto a trailer and driven out of the bush. And eventually what happened was the compressor case had split in half, and part of the N1 wheels had started shedding blades and things. So we were seconds away from engine failure. And that same airframe, I had a fire in flight in the console, a fan seized or something. I had the fortunate circumstance of being really, really familiar with that particular aircraft. I'd flown it pretty much exclusively for 3 years in a row. So even the engine noise, I'm like, well, that's not normal. It hasn't been making that noise before, so let's do something with that. Right away, when I smelt the smoke in the cockpit, I shut off the component that I suspected was the problem, and it was. I had a hydraulic shaft shear in that aircraft, again, fortunately on the ground, just as I was shutting it down. I had a main rotor gearbox start coming apart. Again, there's warning systems in the aircraft, so when things go wrong, at the altitudes that I usually work at, I'm not at an airliner, up at 4,000 feet. We're like 300 feet and below most of the time. So I'm just like find somewhere to land and figure it out on the ground, right?
But I mean, from what I've heard, you work extremely remote out in the bush most of the time.
I do,
right?
yeah.
Like, what happens if you put it down and you don't have help coming? I suppose they bring another aircraft out to service it or take a look, or has that ever had to happen? Or have you always been luckily kind of near some type of civilization?
Usually I'm not too far away from what we'd call the staging site where the engineer is, so depending on the nature of the emergency also, for example, this summer, very, very few places for me to land considered to be like what the client would call class 1 hostile terrain, So basically you got to go back to where the staging is or find a spot, next to a river or wherever where you could put the aircraft down. I mean, now I fly an aircraft type that's extremely reliable, and, knock on wood, there haven't been a lot of issues with it. So, but I mean, it's the nature of what we do. I've been flying for 25 years, and over that span of that career, you're bound to have some things, go wrong.
Right.
It's just a question of recognizing them and having enough mechanical sympathy to understand, like, this is not normal. We should probably put it on the ground because, like Larry would have discovered, gravity's a bitch.
Looking for the best app for navigating your next adventure? Look no further than onX Off-Road. With over 750,000 miles of trails and comprehensive offline maps, you can explore without worrying about cell service. The app features trail ratings, detailed information, and a discover tool to help you find trails near you. onX Off-Road also includes public and private land boundaries, so you'll always know where you can legally off-road, camp, and explore. Want to stay connected? The app features a cell service layer, so you can plan your route with service in mind, which is great for emergencies or just staying in touch. And for added peace of mind, there's a wildfire layer that helps you avoid active fires and smoky areas, keeping you safe and aware of current conditions. With tools like Route Builder, waypoint marking, real-time updates, and route sharing, you're fully equipped for any adventure. Try it for free for 7 days and hit the trails with confidence. Download onX Off-Road today. I'm just really interested because know how much you work on all your own cars and have restored like awesome Volkswagens. You have a 911. You now have a Barracuda, which I think is a whole story in itself that we should get to at some point. Do you think
That's probably a whole podcast.
Exactly? Do you think having the experience of wrenching and working on things and machines and that know-how has helped you to diagnose and understand some of the systems on the aircraft? I know it's completely different systems and completely different ways that things work, but when you're talking about like, oh, I recognize that as a bearing noise, like, does any of that, do you think it's been helpful being able to work on cars and that mechanical background?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let me make it clear. There's an engineer with the aircraft, and he's responsible for the maintenance. I'm not the guy diagnosing anything.
Oh, come on. You can get out there and wrench on it, and we just...
No. We work as a team. We'll discuss things. I'll be like, hey, there's something going on here. Maybe can you have a look at it? And because they're the experts on the aircraft. But sure, okay. Absolutely. Having a mechanical knowledge is very helpful. I was a mechanical designer before I was a pilot. And I've had... a director of maintenance say to me one time, you know too much about mechanics to be operating these aircraft. So yeah, I guess there's probably like, how do I put this? I'm not scared of it. I'm not scared of things going wrong. I just have the faith that hopefully I'll be able to recognize it soon enough. If something does go wrong, that sort of thing, right? So, I mean, if we were constantly living in fear, we wouldn't be able to do these things. Like aviation aside, anything that humans do, if we were constantly living in fear of something going wrong, you wouldn't be able to do them, right? So you manage risk. That's what you do.
Yeah. Thank you, RJ, for joining us. We will be back next week with Chris, and I think I'm out next week, actually, and might be getting a car as well. But we'll talk about that later. I haven't even talked about the last car I bought. I bought a 924, too. They just come and go, RJ. They come and go. All right.
Wow.
Thank you, guys. We will see you next week. Take care.